We live?
We're live.
We live.
We are pretty much live.
Nice. Hello,
Nice.
hello.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody.
I think this is
Sure.
our third open sourcery live stream. And for
Already?
those, yeah, already. And for those who don't know it, open sourcery is sort of like a 4-part live stream series that we do.
Yeah.
Just sort of do what we were already doing internally, like having this sort of office hours kind of meeting where we show really cool stuff that we have done. And we've just turned it into a sort of a live stream to just see if, hey, is this something people find interesting? So this is part 3. We will have another live stream for sure somewhere next month probably. And after that, we'll see if we make it maybe a regular thing.
Yeah, we will know if it gets renewed to another season.
Yeah, the directors allow it.
Yeah, we already lost 1/3 of the people that presented this regularly. We miss you, Felix, but let's go for this one. So, so we usually, as Jochum said, we do some demonstration of stuff we did, update some stuff that's going on very good open source. And yeah, I'm gonna give you all some updates on some things that we working on the past weeks
And
for open source. I will talk about the CLI, and Jochen will talk about the fraud, right?
Frog.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, just post it in the comments. We have an amazing crew. They'll make sure to put the question up, and then we can just look at them and answer them on the go. So
awesome. Save the crew. Talk about the crew. Crew, can you put my screen on the thing? Yes, thank you. So I have here a terminal. Actually, it's a desktop of my macOS system with a terminal open. Descriptive enough? Okay. So I have the terminal open on some directory, literally. And we have very good. Okay, it's a very good CLI. It's a command that if you watch previous episodes of Open Sourcery, it's a CLI that we have. We maintain at very good ventures. It has some useful utilities, commands like packages that those packages get recursively, test that also do tests recursively, but also optimize tests for Flutter tests, and create. So let's talk about something that we added to create. Not analytics, sorry, create. So we have several types of templates working today. I think the most popular one is Flutter app that descriptively enough creates a Flutter app.
One.
Sorry?
It's my favorite one.
Flutter app?
Flutter app, yeah.
I thought it would be Flame game.
Nah, I don't do games.
Who does games? Games with Flutter.
I just developed
Who does that? Anyhow, so we have a Flutter app. Okay, but up until today, each of these types of templates that we have on Create had just one type of application then being generated. But from the next release that we are planning to release either today or tomorrow, adds another type of Flutter app. So when you do, let's go for help here, just to see what are the options. You have several options here, but one of them is template, right? So let's go for template, and have 2 options, and this is the thing that we support to this day, but we have an addition that is where. So it's another template for Flutter app that is directed to create Flutter applications that are ready to run on devices like this one here. Can you see? Yeah. Oof. Yes. So it's Flutter for people's wrists using Wear OS, basically. And boom. I hope it runs. Oh yeah, I didn't create the app name, the application name. Yes. So what are a good name for Wear OS?
My very good Wear app.
Too long.
Wear
app. All right, so we have a my app here being generated, very creative name. And so this is basically just like the core, the template core that we are using. So we have flavors already set up. And we have some samples of code that demonstrate how we structure apps here at Very Good Ventures. So I have a feature, and this feature is divided by some specifics like qubit, the view, etc., etc. So let's see how this works. What's the thing created? So I'm going to open on Android Studio. I hope it opens on Android Studio someday here on my computer. Fantastic. Let me just move this window over here. Boom. We have the thing that was just created by this command, my app. Okay, so what we have in this template so far. And just increase the letters here. It's just like Very Good Core, just the same thing, but with some key differences. Here under Android, we have some files that are already set up for watchOS apps. So usually you have to do some changes to submit the apps to the Play Store, especially on the manifest, that we have this kind of thing here. If you don't have this,
a bit more.
Huh?
You zoom in a bit more.
Oh, okay. Yes. Is that good?
Perfect.
I think I should enter presentation mode. Let's Command-Shift-A, enter presentation.
I didn't even know there was a feature.
Yes. Oof.
Wow.
Yes, but I don't need the things that are outside of presentation mode, so I'll leave this mode pretty soon. So anyhow, to explain this file a little bit, we have this capability, this feature activated here. So you don't necessarily need this to run on emulators, on watch emulators, but you will need this to the store. And also, if your app doesn't have a companion Android app, then you need to add this one to under application that sets the app as a standalone. So this is one of the things, the characteristics that we have for watchOS apps that we usually don't see on Android mobile apps. So this kind of stuff I explained on the article on our blog. So if you go for very good Ventures, right? Very good. The crew, can you link this blog post on the chat somehow? Thank you, please. Yeah. So I can show here. But anyhow, we have the standalone set to true. Yada yada yada. You may add some other stuff here that I can talk about in the future. But anyhow, this is how it's created. Let me leave the presentation mode again because I need the project view and also the emulator. Where's the emulator here? Emulator. Boom. Showing. So we have an emulator for a watch running here. So it's an emulator running watchOS. I didn't execute this application yet, but let's look a little bit on the Flutter side of things. So as I said, we have some flavors, just like Very Good Core. But in this case here, these flavors are directed to these entry point files, main development stuff. So this is nothing new if you know a little bit about our normal Flutter app template. But the interesting part starts here. So this is the fun part. Actually,
Again, can you zoom in?
Ooh, okay.
The zoom is per file, it seems.
Can you remember me constantly?
Yes.
Like a game loop, a while through. Zoom in.
But here you want a while through because then I will be constantly saying it.
Oh, I double dare you. Anyhow, I shouldn't. The fun part starts here. As you probably notice, we have the classic Material app here. But around it, we have the thing that we call the ambient mode. This comes from this plugin here. It's called Where. It's maintained by the Flutter community, and it's pretty fun. It has some utilities, including this one, that builds the application given the mode, the ambient mode. And the ambient mode is basically, if you see this button, I cannot zoom in, but this little icon here, where I have my cursor up on, it emulates this gesture when the user does this, and the watch enters in ambient mode. So see what happens with the general interface of the OS. Goes monochromatic, mostly dark, and it's useful for when the watch has the always-on display activated, so saves battery and runs things more with with a smaller frame rate. But this is all depends on what is the watch that you were running. Anyhow, so we have here a theme data. I'm using material tree now. And important aspects, we have a visual density set to compact. So this will make throughout the entire material system, all the components will have a smaller spacing, basically. So we feel you use less spacing for things like padding and stuff like that. So visual density to compact, so global configuration. And then depending on the wire mode, we change the color scheme of the application. So if the ambient mode is active, we use this monochromatic thing. Oh, sorry, totally confusing here. If it's not on ambient mode, it's on active mode, it uses this color scheme based on the blue color, but it goes for a monochromatic color scheme if it's not, if it's it's ambient. It's the other value for this, and that could be a boolean.
So the active is like when you tilt it, and then ambient is when it's...
The active is the default. The ambient is this that we're seeing on the emulator right now. Yeah, it's confusing to me too, because if the ambient mode is active, yeah. But anyhow, we have it. We have this here running nice. What else? Yeah, I think that's it for this now. But now we enter the feature. That's a counter. So a counter is a very important feature that we have in the templates that counts, basically. Whoa. Yeah. So
can you zoom in again, by the way?
Yeah, I will. Once I open the correct file. Fantastic. So we have here on the view part of the feature, we have the counter page and then counter view. Counter page hooks us to a qubit, which is a very simple one. It's an int, counts up, counts down, increments and decrements. Okay, so inside counter view, we have the party. We have the fun stuff. So layout-wise, this is pretty simple. We have just a column, an elevated button, another elevated button, a counter text in the middle, and that's basically it. So counter text just shows us the number that's in the qubit, and a little text with localization, because this is a template and we demonstrate even things like localization, and a sized box to space. I know. Let me just fix this. All right, now it's good. We still need to update this template with some needs. Anyhow, the buttons increment and decrement, but we also have something else that increments and decrements, which is Rotary event. So some Wear OS devices, like the Galaxy Watch 4, I think just the Galaxy Watch 4 has something that we call the Rotary bezel. That basically, I showed in previous instance of Open Sourcery, a watchOS game that uses the Rotary bezel to control the character. So this is basically the same input, and we listen through this plugin that's wearable Rotary.
We also have a question, by the way.
So usually we support different platforms from the same Flutter project. Do I understand correctly? This should only differentiate Flutter projects. Yes. Yeah, it's also on the article. We explain in detail why we don't support like having all platforms here, because this application is directed to Wear OS, and you cannot target Android and Wear OS in the same application, the very same project. You don't have like a Wear OS directory here. We have an Android one. And of course, we can add the other platforms here, like macOS, Windows, and stuff, but it will be an application that is made for the watch running on the desktop or an iPhone or even on a smartphone. It makes no sense. So that's why in the templates, we just have the Androids to direct people to create standalone apps for Wear OS. But of course, it's Dart, so you can always share code and share logic. So if it's your case, you have a shared logic between your Wear app and a smartphone app, you can just abstract that to a package, probably, in most cases. Anyhow, so okay, we have this layout over here. We are listening to Hotter events that comes from this beautiful plugin that's wearable Hotter. And we listen for the things on stream here, Hotter subscription, and increment or decrement depending on the direction that we have on the updates here. So let's just run this thing. I'm going to run development. Let's see. So this will take some time. I should have started this for a little time ago. So, all right. Do we have any other question regarding Wear OS or anything like that?
I mean, this template is really only focused on Wear OS, right? Like the Apple Watch, for instance.
Yeah. Okay.
You knew I would ask it, so.
Yeah. I know. I mean, this was the very first question when I started talking about Wear OS from basically everyone that heard about it. So it's actually impossible to talk about Flutter support for Wear OS without talking about support for the Apple Watch. So the thing is, it's not that simple. Wear OS is closer to Android than watchOS is closer to iOS in terms of templates and stuff. So, for example, when you build Wear OS, watchOS application, you depends on a different framework than you would from an iOS application or even a macOS application. That is it is WatchKit. It's a different SDK. It's a different framework. Of course, there's lots of shared elements. I mean, you can still use lots of stuff from, for example, Foundation. But natively speaking, it's really different. So this means it's necessary, I would say. It's something that's certainly necessary to run, to have a custom embedder to run Flutter on Wear OS, but it's not like fundamental. But for watchOS, it is fundamental to have a custom embedder or an embedder directed to the Apple Watch. So yeah, we have, so I would say follow this issue, read a little bit, get a little bit of context why, but I think it's doable, but it's just a lot more of work. It's just not making a Flutter and Android app run on watchOS. That's what we are doing here on this template. It's totally different. You have to fork the engine and have its own watchOS directory and the root of the project and stuff. But hopefully someone from the community, I don't know, could help with that, because the Flutter team is, I guess, they have a lot of stuff to do. So
they're already supporting a lot of platforms. So yeah.
Yes, totally. So I'd say it's not a priority for them right now, but it's doable. It's doable. It just requires a little bit of knowledge on the Flutter engine and the native side for WatchKit and stuff like that. Okay, so this is the article that has some explanations, including this one for the Apple Watch, and some other stuff that we could do in the manifest files and etc. Explains every change you had to do in the Android manifest or the Android's activity. So I totally recommend you to read that if you're interested in this aspect. Okay, so are we running this already?
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah. Let me get it out of the ambient
Ooh.
mode, go to ambient mode, get out of ambient mode. It's pretty cool because I learned, I actually didn't know this, but when you change the color scheme on theme data, it animates between a color scheme and another. I find this fantastic. One of the best things I've seen on the material. Okay, so we have it, clicking on buttons, increments, and here on the emulator, let me just bring this window here. Okay, this is not gonna look fine, but I can do this. So let's use the Sourcery, go back to the application, boom. Oof. Let me just make this run side by side again. Yeah, it's a lot. We are not bouncing or anything like that, but it's doable. And it's also the updates in the qubit we can see on the logger here. But yeah, we have Flutter application for watchOS. It's pretty easy to do. But the hardest part, sorry?
Now you can have a counter app on your watch.
A counter app on your watch, which is not that useful, but I mean, you can at least use this to start the awesome apps that people build with Flutter. So, yep, that's it. That's it for watchOS. So stay tuned for the release of very good CLI with this new addition to the create command. But nonetheless, you can already have this template and create things with this template just by using directly Mason. So very good where app. Let me zoom in. Very good where app is already available on BrickHub. So if you use Mason, just execute those things, and you can create the very same template, but it will be without very good CLI. So lame, but anyhow, that's it. Any more questions regarding watchOS? Don't think so, no, right?
Nothing yet. Otherwise, it will eventually pop up, right?
Yes, awesome. So crew?
The crew is sharing the brick.
Awesome, crew. Crew is always ahead. Anyhow.
I guess then it's my turn, right?
It's Jochum time, Dart Frog time.
Okay, Dart Frog time, yay. Let me also share my screen, if I can figure out how. That's always this problem with me. Share screen. Can I share my entire screen? Looks like I can. Is it on the screen? Because I quite literally can't see it right now because I literally only have one screen. Okay. So we're going from a counter app on your watch to a counter app in the backend, because that's my example right now that I'm using to show something new that Dart Frog supports. But to do that, I wanted to first show a problem that Dart Frog has, or had, because since the release of literally today, it no longer has the problem. And that is exactly this example. This is a really simple example with a counter service, which normally would have you can make this a lot easier, but for the sake of showing this, I made a custom class called counter, which has a value and you can increment that value. That we provide that counter currently in our handler. So we have a provider with our counter and we have an instance of the counter, which is getting set when we run or when we serve the server. And then we have a single route that basically reads the counter, increments the value, and then returns a response. So we can see that in action. If I start up the example. And then I was a bit too fast. You can see this route has been requested 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. I mean, it's a counter app. So obviously it will just constantly increment. And this all works. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's a little issue with this. And that's the fact that we are initializing our counter server in the run. So whenever we are serving, basically whenever the server is starting, we are initializing our counter service, which is a late final. It can only be initialized once. This is a really rudimentary example. Normally this could be like a database connection or whatever, but for the sake of showing what I'm going to show, we are using a simple late final. And the problem is, let's say I want to change this text. This URL has been requested a certain amount of times. If I now save this file as a developer, it will try to hot reload and it will throw an error, hey, counter has already been initialized. Because whenever we hot reload, whenever a route changes, we have to rebuild the server and restart the hosting of the server. So it will call our run method, which is initializing a late final, but it is already initialized, and therefore it will throw an error. This is easily circumvented by making it nullable, which is a really horrible way to do this, in my opinion. So if we restart it now, and we just check the route, we can see that it's not working. Why is it not working? Oh, because it's already has not been said. Or maybe it's not allowed to be final. It doesn't matter. There are ways around this using just your code. But that's not really a nice way to do it, because you would have to do a lot of logic here every time to check, oh, can I initialize this or whatever? And if it's, for instance, a third-party package that does the internalization internally, and the only way you can call it is through a class that is called third-party package initialize, and there is no way to check if it's initialized, then you will have to set a Boolean, check if the Boolean was already true or false, etc. You would have to add a lot of logic just to initialize data. So to solve that, we basically have another method that we can now add aside from the run. And to show that, I'll go to the documentation that I created for this. So in the advanced section, this will be released probably today. We have now a custom init method. And let me just zoom out because this is apparently non-readable.
Yeah, my problem was zoom in, your problem is zoom out.
Yeah, like that's because this website didn't have any proper HTML. Well, our docs obviously does. So the custom init method is basically, as it says here, meant to initialize something only on server start. So as a developer, whenever we are doing hot reloading, we do not want to reinitialize whatever is happening in here. It's sort of like the main method from Flutter. Everything that you do in the main method from Flutter will not reinitialize, won't be called on a hot reload. It would be called on a hot restart, but not on a hot reload. And the init is basically the same thing. You can define an init method, and it will only run when the server starts for the first time, when the process is starting. And any hot reloads afterwards, as it says here, will not trigger this method until a hot restart has happened. So let me just add this in here. So we have this init method. We get access to the IP and port that we will eventually probably be serving on. Like you could technically use a different port here, hard-coded, like whatever you want. But at least these are the values that Dartfrog is providing. So you're in the init, you also have access to that for whatever reason. You do not have access to the handler because that is being recreated on every hot reload, because we have to recreate the routes, etc. But at least we have access to the IP and port if you need them. And then the only thing we really have to do is move our initialization of our counter service into the init and restart Dartfrog to properly show it off. So now it's restarted, so we can show that it's working. We can still request stuff. And if I now change the route again to this route has been requested, it will just reload without any errors. And you can see the counter is still going upwards because this service was initialized in init and not in run. To showcase it even better, I can just add a simple print statement on init and on serve. So let's restart it, and then you can see once it started, we have an on init, and then we have an on serve. And if we now change anything, let's say we want to change the on serve called, you can see only the on serve called is printed, and the on init is never printed because it will only be initialized once.
That's awesome. That's
so this. Yeah, and this allows people to, for instance, set up locally set up a database connection, and they don't have to reconnect or whatever whenever they just add new routes or change routes or whatever, because it's already initialized, it's already connected, etc. And that would also lower the loads on databases and such, because every hot reload would reconnect, for instance. And now you can just optimize that. And we no longer have the whole like, oh shit, I did something. I can't like I have to make this weird logic to handle that.
Awesome. I mean, it's really cool that you did even a counter, because it's really easy to see the parallels between Dart, Frog, and Flutter.
Yeah.
So the counter thing could be something like a qubit or something like that. There's a provider, could be something like a provider or a block provider. And even init, as you said, is the main, and run and serve is run app, and everything, every handler, hot handler, looks like a build method that's short-lived. So that's really cool. I really like that.
And the reason for people that might be wondering, why is it not called main instead of init, is to make sure that there is a really clear difference between the run and the init, because you could also say that a run is a sort of a main, but there is a real main internally, like in the generated code. If you look at the server.dart here, we have a main. And then if you read this code, it makes sense. We'll first do the init, and then we do a create server, which will call our run. So Dartfrog has the logic to determine, okay, what in which step should things happen? And the moment you call something main, it's really hard to say, okay, well, when will that run compared to all the other methods? So instead of using main, we decided to use init, because we already had a run, which wasn't a main method either. So yeah, that was just to make sure that it was a bit clearer in which one does what, by just reading the code instead of figuring it out through reading docs.
It's good to clear to let this thing clear that this class, that this file being written here, the main.dart, is gonna be used to compose in the end.dart application, but it is not the entry point file.
No, it's not the real entry point. The real entry point is the server.dart that we internally generate.
And there's a main.
Yes, and there's the real main that we use.
Fantastic. That's really cool. So today, very good CLI and Dartfrog, new stuff. Awesome.
Yes. I mean, this is pretty much it. As I mentioned, it's already released, so you can already do this. The documentation will be published today. I was literally right before the live stream working on this to make sure it's at least presentable.
Right.
But those are the new features. I mean, Dartfrog has a lot of new features over the last few weeks, but there are more to come. And then hopefully we can show those in a different live stream as well.
Yes, next one. Okay, do we still have any time? I think we do, right?
Yeah, we have plenty of time as always, right?
Yeah, because you said you were working on this documentation right before the stream, and I was trying to make something work that I was looking around this past few weeks, which is something that really caught my attention. It's the FFI. So some years ago, when the FFI was like a really new thing, I did some experiments with with C. I just gave a major spoiler. Crew, can you share my screen, please? All right, thank you. So in the last Flutter Forward, the only Flutter Forward, in the Flutter Forward, the Dart team presented some cool stuff. One of them was mentioned, at least, was the FFI capability of working with both Objective-C and Swift. And I thought maybe this is really cool because Apple operating systems, especially macOS, we can dynamically load stuff, just like on Windows, you can load DLLs on runtime. We can do this on macOS. So can we make a counterpart of the package Windows32 on macOS? This is the thing I was trying out, and the answer is not so much, because there's lots of stuff that we have to take into consideration. But it looks really promising. So they have a very nice example here. So let me see if I can execute this example right at this live. I'm trying to find the iTerm window that I have it running. Not this iTerm window.
You have too many terminals open.
Yes, I have way too many terminals. I have, I guess, 8 iTerm windows. Oh, no problem. We can just do it live then here. Just clone it. So we
Let's
have
do some live coding, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's not live coding.
What could go wrong?
It's live executing someone else's code, which is not that bad, right? So I'm here back on some directory on my computer somewhere, and we can just let's just clone this thing. I don't know if you will be able to hear it, but the example they have here, it's an audio player that is calling native APIs to play audio, and it's not even a Flutter plugin, it's just Dart. So let's go for FFI gen, example, Objective-C, and we have it. So this is a Dart application. So let's go, let me just open this on Android Studio. Okay, so we have it. So we have this file here, play audio, with some weird code, right? Some very weird code. If you are not used to the FFI, have some weird stuff happening here, but I can explain.
Can you zoom in on the weird code?
Yes. Oof, look even weirder now, right? Okay, so we have some interesting parts here. Let's start from the pub spec. In this case, this package is using the FFI Jane package, which is pretty cool, that automatically generates FFI bindings from header files. But the fun part about Objective-C and macOS is that you have header files all about, from all frameworks, basically. So if I just for in terms of for the sake of demonstrating, if you go for this file here, these are all the frameworks that are available. So some of them, one that I was trying to make work earlier, but didn't have success, but I will have if I keep trying, is game controller framework, which is pretty cool. It's for game controllers, like game controllers. So pretty cool. And there's Quasar, that's basically for listing like active windows or manipulating like how different screens behave on macOS. And yeah, there's lots and lots and lots. AVKit. So for this case, they're using AVF audio, right? So let's go back here. And from these headers, it generates this file here, which is bindings, which is huge. And not even gonna zoom in because too much. And most of the code, it's pretty weird. So this is, it's not even that big. It's 67,000 lines of code, which is could be worse. Could be worse. Could be worse because they are ignoring everything and just generating bindings that are necessary to use this interface here, which is the AV audio player. If you look into AV audio player, into the Apple documentation, you will see that it belongs to the AVF audio framework. So this is a hint from where to find it, and it's the description of the class basically. So it's a API documentation. Anyhow, and well, it generates the bindings. So next step is to load the dynamic library that's found in this path here for the AVF audio. But again, you have the same for most frameworks out there. Mm-hmm. And this is the fun part. Okay, so we open the dynamic library and it creates a class for the bindings. So this is the main bind class that we name here. So it will be basically the center point for all the native classes to be based on. So in this case, in a string, which is a string from Cocoa, for example, you can just use the lib and then a normal Dart string, but in this case it's file because it's the first argument of the thing. It loads the file with INS URL. Again, this is in the bindings. It's a native class. And then start the fun part. It's allocation of memory, which happens here. And we need an audio player instance, AVF audio player, with this method that's init. But it's the fun thing is, if you look the init counterpart on Objective-C, let me just drag this. So it's using Objective-C in the documentation. Make sure that you have that when you're working on this kind of stuff. Let me just open this. You have the inits here. So it's basically the same name you have on the Dart side that's totally generated by FFIGen. And has the duration of the audio, of the player, in this case here, and basically plays the sound. So let's go for terminal again. If we go for, come on, open, okay, Dart. Dart, it's play audio Dart, and I pass a file, in this case, this test MP3.
Mm-hmm.
Probably people in the stream, oh, yeah, let me just go for packages. Oh, it should be Dart packages get, but anyhow, same thing.
It works either way.
Yeah. It's playing for me, I don't know. I'm gonna risk.
I can hear something really softly.
Yeah, it's playing this file here, which is awesomely fantastic. I love this. So just basically using native stuff to run, and it's from a CLI application. It's pretty cool, but also there's also some limitations, because, for example, you can try to do the same thing like I did right before the stream, like this entire morning. I was trying to open an AppKit window from the CLI, but there's a problem because there's some treating complications here. When you call FFI things, it doesn't happen in the main Dart isolate. It happens on the second thread, and basically macOS freaks out when you try to create a window from a secondary thread.
Yeah,
you
have to start it in. I've tried to do this as well with like a Raylib, which is like a rendering engine. And it had the same problem. You can't run it on macOS because.
Yeah, but apparently there's a way of using, if you use the global dispatch thing from macOS. So macOS dispatch, it's its own framework. So it is cool to direct some calls, some specific sections of code into a specific thread. So if you have enough knowledge of this, you can probably run this on the main thread, which I don't have, but we can just experiment and try it out, so we can get that knowledge. Anyhow, so this is the thing I was trying to make FFI experiments. I was trying to basically do this, this is Swift, do the exact same thing with the FFI, but it freaks out here, and it freaks out here on NS window init. But as far as I could look at least, some on how to create some struts, for example. So this is how we create a cdirect. So I left this. I was going to delete everything for this stream, but some stuff is pretty cool. So I figured I could show this. At least we can, create a rect because I'm just using AppKit here as my library. Another thing important, you can talk.
Yeah, because technically speaking, you can obviously still do this, but then you would have to set up your own C library, which uses Dart and then run it in a second.
I mean, you could create your own Objective-C modular that dispatches things to the main thread, but then you can create the FFI gem on top of that file, and also, of course, you have to have a header file for that too. Yeah. And then from the FFI, you can dispatch stuff for the mainstream. But it's some work that I still didn't.
So basically, we need to dispatch Dart package that does it for you in Dart, so you can do it in Dart, and then we'll dispatch it for you.
Yes.
That sounds like hell.
I mean, we are not even talking about Flutter here. So
No, I
how
know.
about creating Flutter plugins for this? So then we have something else to worry about. But yeah, so basically this is something that I was trying to work on. But if you look into the thing here, this is a result of a lot of exploration, trial and error. It's still work in progress, but we can show this anyway live. Okay, so FFIGen is pretty smart because when it finds a header file, it keeps generating bindings even from the imported header files. So if we're running here on I mean, I'm being very specific here, but if I was going to import foundation age, which is huge and imports lots of stuff, it would create bindings for all the classes of the imported files. So we have this option here to do not generate bindings unless we explicitly tell to expose these interfaces.
Yeah.
So yeah, so here I'm exposing, for example, an ES application, and this is dependent on server stuff. And for example, CG point, CG size. So this is from the core graphics framework. So basically, I'm also creating an NS application here. Yada, yada, yada. It's pretty fun, pretty cool.
So you can't really run this because obviously it's on the because of the.
I mean, I'm not doing anything here. I mean, I get the shared application, but I don't do anything with that.
Yeah, what I mean is, like, could you, for instance, with the audio one, can you run that in Flutter? Or would that also have the same thread problem?
I couldn't find any simpler framework than AVF audio, but I'm pretty sure we can use this on Flutter.
Currently, like things like audio players and just audio, I think they still use the method channels, which are always async. Well, this technically could be a sync variant and maybe even faster for things like games.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have
that is really cool.
Stuff. Yeah.
If that would work for Flutter, then that's really cool.
I mean, from all of the applications I could see for using Objective-C, AVF audio is the simplest because it doesn't require Cocoa or anything like that. So there's not that many limitations. I try to run game controller, but for you to have access to game controllers, first, for applications, you need some capability activated. And for CLIs, you need to listen to a global notification center, the default notification center. And that's really hard to do with the FFI, at least from my experience. And I couldn't make it run. I was listening to the notification center, having access to the controllers, and still couldn't manage to run from the FFI, which was pretty annoying. There was no error messages or anything. AppKit, that one we need a dispatch. Would probably be doable, but anyhow. So this is the kind of a subject that I got the first contact with when I was working for roles for the Windows app that we had, and I need something very specific from the Windows system, and no plugin had. So I didn't write one line of C++ or C there. It was just Dart using the Windows 32 package. It was a Flutter plugin written only in Dart, if you exclude all the generated stuff from Windows 32. So it was pretty cool, that idea, and I really like. I'm really in love with this idea since then, and having the possibility of having this on macOS is something else.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Anyhow, still, oh yeah, it's worth noticing that this is still something in experimentation. So if you go for Dart, run FFIGen, there's a warning here. It's experimental, so it will change, it will break, possibly. Yeah. So don't build production stuff with this yet. But yeah, it's something cool for FFI. Awesome. So that's it.
Well, this is really like the amount of frameworks that macOS exposes with all those headers, it opens the whole world, right?
Yeah, and then we can go and start talking beyond macOS, talk about watchOS, iPhone OS, what's the name of the SDK on the directories, iOS. And we will see more in different and bespoke frameworks, but it will be impossible to load dynamic libraries on iOS applications without being totally banned from the App Store.
Yeah, that's probably not a good thing to do.
No. And beyond that, we can talk about, oh my God, someone's calling me, I'm really sorry.
Mr. Popular.
Yeah, I mean, I never receive calls, but when I'm live, I receive like a lot. Anyhow, so we can talk about the JNI, which is the Dart interoperability with the JNI thing, but that's something else I still didn't look at. So hopefully for the next stream, we have something cooler for now.
Yeah. Hopefully for the next live stream, we'll also have some really cool Dartfrog stuff.
Yes, we sure have. We sure have.
A lot of things are going to happen with it, so.
Yeah. Any questions, comments, or anything about that?
And if not, you can always reach us on Twitter.
Absolutely. Yes.
Hopefully next time we'll have a few guests as well. This time it wasn't just us two, because we need a break from time to time.
Absolutely.
It looks like the crew is excited for Dartfrog.
Yeah. I mean, it's a framework that's represented by 2 emojis, not 1. 2. It's pretty
cool. Emoji.
Okay.
Can't say that about other frameworks.
Yeah. So I guess that's it for today. Right.
Oh, when the init well, it's already released. The only thing that isn't released is the documentation. Yeah.
I mean, it's released since when?
3 hours ago.
So yeah, just
upgrade the CLI, and you should be able to use it straight out of the book without any issues. And if you do have issues, please open an issue on GitHub.
Please do.
I'll make sure the documentation gets out today as well, because that's the best way for people to find these kinds of things so quickly.
All right.
Yeah.
You're fast.
I am fast. Yeah, I'm a speedy boy. I had 2 weeks of PTO, so I have all this post PTO energy left, you know.
Okay. I'm starting PTO next week. Let's go.
The baby unicorn is also watching.
Yes, Jorge just had a kid.
Yeah.
The kid is already learning about Dartfrog.
You have to start young to beat all the other developers for the next generation.
Since you deploy the kid has started learning stuff.
Deploy the kid, okay.
Yeah, that's a way to put it, right?
Yeah, that's acceptable. Well,
all right.
I guess if there are no more questions, see you all next time. Hopefully we'll have some really interesting guests, so stay tuned on our Twitter.
Yes, we need interesting guests. It should be interesting. Anyhow, let's go.